everyone, welcome to Letters to Laodicea. My name is Demas, and if you're a relatively new listener to the Revelations Radio Network, you probably have never heard of me. And if you're kind of an older member, you probably do know me, and you're like, where is Demas? Where is Letters to Laodicea? So here I am. This is Letters to Laodicea, new episode, and I am your host, Demas, and I've missed it. I've missed podcasting, and I do want to continue doing it. I've been kind of busy with work, and ideas that I've had have not been able to be. I haven't been had the time to that I used to have to develop ideas and do studies and stuff like that. So, but Christmas is coming up, and I figured I really need to do an episode and let everyone know that I'm still here. And so I am here. And, here's the next episode. So, I don't know what I said last episode, if it was something like, if you're just, if this is the first time you've heard of me, go and check out some of my older episodes or whatever. But I don't want to call this a reboot or anything like that, but I will say that whatever I was saying in the previous episode about what my next topic would be, this is probably different and, not the same. So I guess in that sense it's a reboot, but not really a reboot. It's just kind of like I've been gone for a while. So, as you know, I'll just kind of reintroduce myself, I guess, for people who are new to the show. I'm a filmmaker. I work in Hollywood, and I was deceived by the New Age, essentially, by some conspiracies and things that I was seeing, and I was just getting awakened to a lot of the evil that's in the world, essentially, and deceived and kind of taking the rabbit holes, the bait that they leave for you. That if you listen to Chris White, he articulates that a lot. Very well about how rabbit holes are created to, for whatever thing you're into, there's going to be some sort of entry into the occult and into just bad stuff that when you are saved, then you realize it's just all, just all evil. And, and now I know that the conspiracies exist, but I'm not as frightened by them. I'm not as, I know that I have victory in Christ. And so they don't scare me as much as they used to, and, I don't even want to give a lot of it, any airtime. It's mostly what I want to talk about is just, how thirsty we all are for the gospel and for the truth of the word of God. And, I'd rather spend time on those things. So, but also I understand that the world is deceived, and you kind of have to meet people at halfway, So, anyway, so again, I come from Hollywood, and as such, Hollywood is kind of a place that's like maybe 5 or 10 years ahead of everyone else in terms of like things that are normal. I don't know if maybe, what you should do is listen to my old episode that I go into the normative power of the actual, about how it's kind of a progression where things become normal the moment they become actual, and the moment they exist, they're new, and then they become just normal, and then, nobody's like, after a while, nobody's like, crazy about those ideas anymore, and they're just like, whatever. And, the Bible's been around so long that it's been so normal these days, that it's like nobody really gives it a lot of credence because it has been around for so long. And, but if it is like the truth, then there's nothing more precious than it, if it is the truth. So, it's you have to kind of meet the Bible halfway to itself as well. So you kind of have to think about things in terms of the patterns of thought that would have been around back when it was written and things, and that's how you can draw metaphors and conclusions or whatever, and truth value for today, I guess. But on the other hand, as far as the normative power, is that things become normal that are forbidden in the Bible. Things in the social aspects of society, things that never were normal before are starting to become normal now, and that's not actually true. I guess you could say Sodom and Gomorrah, these things have been normal, but you probably guessed I'm kind of getting into the area of sexuality and gender and things like that, and gender identity, and I don't want to put it in terms of just homosexuality, but obviously that is part of it, but just kind of like the whole confusion of what was once a specific two roles for the man and for the woman. And what I want to do is start a few episodes that are going to go into things that I'm reading about regarding, I guess what I want to frame it as, not as why homosexuality is wrong, but give you a way to approach people that maybe are gay or gay friendly, or champions of the marriage equality and stuff like that. People that are deceived by that side of things, where when they hear the Christian talk and quote Leviticus 18:22, which is, "Thou shalt not lie with mankind as with womankind; it is an abomination." Like, that's like directly from the mouth of God. Basically, that's God talking to Moses, and so that is the truth. It is an abomination. But the thing is that kind of comes off. excuse me. That kind of comes off as pretty short with people, and it doesn't seem to have a very reasoned, thought pattern behind it. It's just kind of like no, and people don't like just no these days, especially in this climate of deception where it's all about you and it's all about submitting to the yes and to the universe. You know what I mean? Like the people are, especially in Hollywood, it's all about it's certainly all about you, but it's all about asking the universe and being open to like all this energy or whatever. And anyway, I don't want to get down that rabbit hole too much, but what I want to say is we need to be sensitive to the fact that people are smart, and it's not just like something that you can't just like read Romans 1 and expect people to like agree with you. And even though it makes sense to us because we have so much to draw from, and those truths are built around lots of other things that as a Christians or whatever that we have in our background, so that it starts to make sense because it's in a context of a lot of other things, a lot of other ideas. But when you don't have that background, it just seems like a no, and it just seems like you just want to ask the question of like, well, why is it wrong? Love between two people of the same gender. And they see it in terms of a civil rights issue, and it just I don't know. I'm trying to be a little sympathetic with their position, so but not at the same time not condone it. Because I'm in Hollywood. I have to maintain friendships and working relationships and things with people that I have a lot of gay friends, and we don't usually get into this a lot because I'm not like totally outspoken about being anti-gay or anything like that. I just I don't think it's like a policy like that. I don't know. It's anyway. It's something that if I was to have that conversation with people, I can't just quote some Bible verses to them and expect them to just agree with me. It's so much more deep than that for them. They're so invested in this being their truth that they're not going to listen. So what you have to do is what I hope to do in the next few episodes, which is make a case for what the spiritual meaning of gender is, and what the institution of gender and why we are male and female in the first place. Like, that's a fundamental question, and I think that it has meaning. There's lessons that are to be learned by the fact that we were created male and female, and that that it ultimately points to Jesus Christ. So that's what I'm trying to do in the next few episodes, kind of like the spiritual meaning behind gender. And so this is hopefully going to be, food for thought as you consider some of the issues, and trying to be sensitive to people that are smart, but also smart enough to not just accept an answer that says you will not do this. Okay, so I wanted to get into the spiritual meaning of gender. Again, if you don't recognize my voice, if it's not, if Letters to Laodicea is not on your radar, I don't know. If you want to go ahead and listen to all of the episodes, I don't know, I probably have like 30 or so. Check it out. But here's a little background. I've gone into this before, but part of the reason that I guess that this topic is so personal to me is that I had a girlfriend who was basically financially independent and didn't need me as a breadwinner. And it was very difficult. Like, living with her this was before I got saved, basically, but it was kind of as I was getting to the point of becoming saved. I was raised in a Christian home, but I was pretty much not a Christian. I guess looking back, I don't feel like I was until essentially I broke up with her. But basically, she didn't need a man. Like, she owns a home, she didn't need me to be, she was totally financially independent. And it was hard for me to be a man. It was hard for me to feel like I mattered. And, even she and her friends, like, there was a book that they were reading or whatever called Are Men Necessary by Maureen Dowd. And, she's a feminist. She's about how, women don't need men and they can be just as successful as men, or they should be, or whatever, in the business place. And it's just kind of trying to erase the gender lines or whatever. And I mean, she's not correct, but I don't know. I guess I don't want to get into this conspiratorial stuff and blame the CIA for women's lib and sexual revolution. It's much bigger than that. The flesh is such a willing servant to unrighteousness and sin that. So anyway, I don't want to get into like blaming some invisible hand for this. This is something that is going to happen, and this whole breakup of the gender roles. I think we've learned that in the back of the book, that's going to be the thing. I think, if gender, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but if gender is the divinely chosen vehicle or metaphor, or one of them, to be a metaphor for God's relationship to us, and if it is to be fully like instructive, then we expect it to be attacked. And we know that sin has to get ripe. Sin has to become full in order for the judgment to be just, I suppose. And so we need to prove that our flesh is like nothing good, and that the heart is deceitfully wicked among, what is that verse in Jeremiah? The heart is desperately wicked, and who can know it? We're going to prove that to God, collectively, as we just devolve into total degenerates. By the time, Revelation and stuff happens, I think that we're going to be, completely given over to it. I mean, you see it in Romans 1. We were given over to a reprobate mind. Those things are all, that's part of the plan, is to have us all fail. And that's part of God's, charge against us, or the case against flesh and sin, is that it sort of has to prove itself and get full. And the fullness of sin would include the breakup of the divinely inspired gender roles, I suppose. So we're going to see women's liberation, sexual revolution, gay marriage. It's all proof that, left alone, we're going to fail without being guided by the Spirit, basically. So anyway, back to my girlfriend. She's and Maureen Dowd, like they're smart enough to know that men are obviously necessary for the propagation of the species. But anyway, I don't know. I guess to my girlfriend, I thought part of it was like, I thought that it kind of was a marriage, and the relationship started to feel awkward because I wasn't allowed, to kind of fulfill any of the roles. And like, she was providing for me sometimes. I struggle in my career, and I was struggling monetarily, and she would be like, not struggling, and I would, have to accept, she'd be like, hey, come and hang out, or, let's do this trip, or let's do that, or whatever. And I'd be like, no, I can't afford it. And then it's like, well, I'll pay for you. It's no big deal. And then it's like, once you accept a couple times those things, and it's like, sort of like, you're not a man anymore. Just happens. I mean, it's just like anyway. So it's after the first year or two, after the initial, preciousness of the relationship kind of wore off, I found it just harder and harder to be a man in this relationship when she, owns a home and I'm, renting with a roommate. So anyway, that's kind of one of the reasons I am into this, is because I just felt like I was so in a backwards relationship, and I just felt like it was so, not that it was wrong because of what I believe, it's that it was felt wrong. It just felt wrong, and because it was wrong, I just felt like, wow, I've got, experiential evidence for the Bible being correct, and these gender roles being the right way of doing things, or at least that the wrong way of doing things has proven itself to be wrong, that it didn't work out. And, obviously the divorce rate is going up and all those things. And that's because we're starting to not be in these traditional roles anymore. And also people have a lot more ambition, and women have a lot more ambition far beyond just raising a good family and having a good home. And I'm just not saying that that's bad, because that would be a little too politically incorrect, I suppose. It would make me seem very backwards if I said that women shouldn't have ambitions. But take a look at this article about Lady Gaga. It's a very quick article. I'm just going to read it real quick. It's in Vanity Fair, I suppose. I think it's in the January issue coming up. And it caught my eye because the headline said, Lady Gaga, quote, I have an inability to know what happiness feels like with a man. And then subhead is, the singer says she's taken her past bad romances and turned them into fuel for success. She may have legions of fans who hang on her every note, but Lady Gaga's love life, once she's out of the spotlight, is still a little lacking. Quote, I've never felt truly cherished by a lover, the singer reveals in the January issue of Vanity Fair. I have an inability to know what happiness feels like with a man. The eccentric crooner, 25, muses that a big roadblock in her path to intimacy may come from her dual creative and competitive spirits. Quote, perhaps it's a whole whose dick is bigger contest, she says, of her past heartbreaks. If I go to the piano and write a quick song and play it back, they are angry with how fast and effortless it is. That's who I am, and I don't apologize for it. Gaga, who is currently rumored to be dating Vampire Diaries actor Taylor Kinney, cited a few bad romances in her past as fuel to further launch her forward in her career. Quote, I had a man say to me, you will die alone in a house bigger than you know, with all your money and hit records, and you will die alone, she says. Even though I know it sounds a bit Hallmark, whenever I find myself in that kind of stressful, worthless moment, I would think, I'll show you. And so there's this competitive nature. I don't know, I guess I bring up Lady Gaga too because she's kind of a gender bender figure as well. She sort of looks like she could be she kind of has like a bit of a, Adam's apple. She kind of dresses like a cross-dresser sometimes. She kind of comes off as, to me, she looks like a man cross-dressing as a woman in a weird way. And I know that is part of, if we want to get conspiratorial, that's part of the whole, that's part of one of the big conspiracies is that in alchemy, one of the goals is the hermaphrodite, which is the both genders embodied in the same body, and somehow, spiritually or, whatever, like esoteric knowledge, you're going to have, or, the fact that gender and men have one thing and women have another thing. If you could combine those somehow, the saying goes, into a hermaphrodite, you would have something bigger and better and, whatever. So, and obviously that's, that's also a slap in the face of God's plan. So, yeah, anyway, so there you go. That's like where Lady Gaga is at as a 25-year-old businesswoman, essentially. And so now I just want to kind of go over some thoughts about what God's plan is for gender. And this will kind of just be the opening episode for this study on what gender is and what the lessons we can learn from God's plan for gender. And this would be a good conversation to have, with homosexual or someone who maybe even isn't a homosexual, but kind of champions those causes and whatever. I don't know. I just figured it would be good for me to get an episode out there and just like, I've had these thoughts for a while and I just want to, I know they're not fully developed into something really like point by point, but just kind of chew on it, and anyway, what I want to also do real quick is just read Romans 1. It's about man's total depravity, basically. And it does hint at homosexuality and the breakup of gender roles as being part of the end game for, this rebellion and this depravity. And then that is the kind of the last straw, is that they would get rid of traditional gender roles. So here it is, Romans 1, starting at verse 20. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse, because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were they thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds, and four-footed animals, and creeping things. Therefore God also gave them up unto uncleanness in their lusts of their hearts, to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason God gave them up unto vile passions, for even their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. Likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another, men with men, committing what is shameful, and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error which was due. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting, being filled with unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness. They're whisperers, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things, disobedient to parents, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, and unmerciful, who, knowing the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only did the same, but also approve of those who practice them. And so, that's kind of a big list of bad stuff. But take a look at the last verse. They not only did they know the righteous judgment of God, they knew, Leviticus 18:22. They know those things. It's funny because you talk to a gay person and they have that verse highlighted, and then they rip, and certain friends they know, or people that they rip, they like to go to Gideon Bible, or whatever, like hotel rooms, and rip the page of Leviticus out that's on 18:22. So they know the righteous judgment of God. They know exactly where to find that verse. And so not only do they do the same, but they also approve of those who practice them. It's not only that it's not homosexuality that's the problem. It's the even worse problem is that the public condones it. Is kind of the feeling of that, I suppose. And so, I don't know if we're there yet, because LA and all these people that they're so far ahead of the game. But in the heart of the country, I think there is still some time left for these things to be like totally, for people to be totally given over to it. I think it's pretty fashionable these days to just say, yeah, I don't care what people do with their bodies, blah blah blah. But marriage is this and that. And you kind of have to be careful with that view too, because it's kind of like that's kind of like approving what they do, and I don't know. It's if you look in the prophets, I think it was Ezekiel, who, and this is off the top of my head right now, but basically, it might have been Ezekiel, it might have been Jeremiah, I'm not sure. So basically, God tells this prophet, if you warn the people and they rebel, then they will be judged, but you will be, you've done your job, or whatever, as a watchman and as a, giving them that warning. But if you don't warn them and they do the thing, then they will be judged too, but the judgment will be, he's going to be blamed for it. So, it's like we who have the truth need to figure out a way of telling these people, not telling them, hey, look at Leviticus 18:22, and thinking that that's like somehow good enough. And certainly that's a good thing to do. Tell people that this type of lifestyle is bad. but to figure out a way to somehow be creative in the sense that you want to meet them where they are, and not just be totally have animosity or breed animosity. I think they're going to have that either way, but then it won't be on your head. When they get judged, you can't. I don't know. Anyway, so that's just something that I thought was interesting in this sense, but that was what Paul, wrote to the Romans about just the heart of man and the depravity of man, basically. And interesting that it was so specific to homosexuality and the breakup of the traditional marriage. So, with that said, traditional marriage. Let's talk about the traditional marriage. Let's talk about the first marriage of Adam and Eve. We can look at Genesis 2:24, and everyone knows the story of Adam and Eve. A man shall leave his parents and go to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. I think that was it. So here's the verse. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. So what I wanted to say is that we'll get into more of this, but this is fulfilled as a prophecy, sort of as a metaphor. Men and women are a metaphor for Christ and the church. And, you see this over and over. You see it as Israel married to God. You see it as Christ and his virgin bride, the church. And it's sort of like the model is the marriage. The model is Adam and Eve. And it goes deeper than that. And I wanted to get into that as well. But, it's interesting that the Son, leaves his heavenly Father to become joined to his wife, the church. And they also become one flesh. The church, it's also called the body of Christ. And they become one. And again, we're just over and over instructed as the church, to be unified in spirit without petty quarrels and things like that. We're one. We need to be one and unified. But I've always thought of the one flesh as having a secondary meaning, and it's kind of referring to children. If you think of the two becoming one or leading to one flesh, yes, you become one flesh by becoming joined in sex, but you go apart again, and you're still two. So the one flesh, what if it's children? So, the two become together and they become or lead to one flesh. You kind of think of a sperm and an egg kind of becoming one baby. And it's, if you just think of it in, I don't want to get graphic, maybe in the next episode or two, I probably will get kind of graphic, but, think of a sperm having half of the flesh or the DNA of the father, and the egg having half of the DNA of the mother. That's like the flesh becoming one, and the new flesh is totally different than the others, and yet it's of the two, but it's one. You know what I mean? So in that sense, I was thinking the one flesh could refer to children. And you also think of, Paul talking about his spiritual children in the churches that he's planted. You also think of the vine metaphor by Jesus when he talks about the vine bearing fruit, the fruit being yourself, but also, bearing fruit, bearing more fruit, bearing more children as far as, other believers, bringing people to Christ. So anyway, maybe that's the one flesh, and one by one, there's another one flesh, another one flesh. Anyway, so let's look at also the extended metaphor of the Adam and Eve in the concept of sin, and also of Christ, and let's just think. So it's an interesting type of Christ and the personal individual believer. And I'm talking about the marriage of Adam and Eve. So think of Adam. He was created first, and so he knows that he's first. He's experienced the world as being one with God, just one man and God. There was a point where it was just him and God. And he had a special relationship with God, and there's no doubt about that he was Adam, and that was it. It was just him and God, and obviously that mirrors Christ and the Father, in that he was one with God. You think of John 1, in the beginning with the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and so you have the idea that the two were, that the Son was with the Father, just as Adam was with God. So it's coherent there. Now, so he has this memory of being, he has this memory of that special relationship. But then Eve was created second, so she doesn't have that. So when she was created, there was already another person there. So she doesn't have this special, it's just me and God thing. Even though that it was him, it was Adam and Eve and God for a while, but she doesn't have that special, like, unique relationship. She doesn't see the way Adam does, that at one point there's no one there, and then she's there. He puts him to sleep and pulls a rib out or whatever, and makes flesh out of his rib or whatever. It makes the woman. But anyway, so he well, that in itself is interesting, that it was created out of his own flesh, i.e. in his own image. So we were created in the image of God. It's interesting that Eve was created out of the flesh of Adam. It's very, very interesting. And also that the woman would be the one created out of the man's flesh, which kind of goes backwards. It's not really how it works usually. That you think of the woman being the one that bears the children and creates the fruit, but at one point it was, God creating man directly. You know what I mean? So going further, it's interesting. So Eve is deceived, and we see that it was Eve. It wasn't Adam. He wasn't deceived. We kind of think of that as, oh, well, women are stupid or something, or it's easy to just like be immature and think of that way. But if you think of it deeper, it's that, humankind was deceived, and Jesus Christ was not. He knew that it was wrong, and Adam knew that it was wrong. Now, it's interesting that Adam wasn't really there. You read the account, and he doesn't seem like he's there when Satan is tempting Eve. And so it's almost like she sins, and then he comes home or something, and then he's like, whoa. But then so it's like there, on one hand, Eve was deceived, but Adam loved her so much that he wanted to stay with her and take on whatever punishment she was going to get. Take that on because he loves her so much, just to be with her. In exactly the same way, that's what Christ was not deceived when he took on our own sin to become sin for us, to identify with our situation, but overcome it, in order to be with us, because he loves us so much, just as Adam loved Eve and decided to join in her punishment, I guess. But of course, that was a foreshadowing of Jesus coming and becoming a sin for us, so that he would be able to present us blameless, and present us as his bride. So anyway, just wanted to discuss it, I guess, get my thoughts out there, and like maybe think of it a little more, and come back with some more study. Please give me your thoughts about the issue. Yeah, and again, it's about interfacing with people, that are completely given over. Read Romans 1 again. Those are the kinds of people that we're dealing with. Not that they're bad or whatever. Like we all are. But, it's harder to just expect them to kind of come around when you give them a Bible verse. So let's do some deep thinking and some deep study, and figure out a way of wooing and reasoning with people, I guess, with these silly ideas that that we come from the Bible with. But I don't know. Obviously, we know that it's foolishness. All these things, all these metaphors. It's considered foolishness, the gospel, to those who perish, and we know that from Paul. But to us, it is the power of God for salvation. So with that, let's try to figure out a way of presenting it like the power of God to the people that are, at least on their current trajectory, headed towards death. All right, this is Letters to Laodicea, and my name is Demas. You can check me out on the Revelations Radio Network, revelationsradionetwork.com. You can find me on Twitter. My name there is Laodicea, Laodecia. And my email, laodecians@gmail.com.